So in this video today, we're going to cover some bombshell statements made by former U.S. President Bill Clinton about Palestine that you are going to want to hear. Clinton has a sobering message for those who are diehard Palestinian supporters that might wake them up. He shares some sobering truth that you need to hear. And we are also going to take a look at some other news articles and videos related to the situation, so we can get to the truth about what is really happening. The mainstream media is really liberal at this point, and they have been lying to the world and covering up things, and it's becoming harder to know what really is going on because the media clearly has a strong liberal bias. While the whole world seems to be turning its back on Israel and the Jewish people, we are finding few voices who can see this situation with clarity. Never before in world history do we need spiritual discernment like never before. Because something by the eye or the ear look wrong but are right. And some things will look right but end up to be wrong. And we should look to Scripture as much as we can, but we must also be sensitive to the leading of the Holy Spirit as well. And if the Holy Spirit inside of us, He will align us with things that are of Him. Israel is this tiny little country, smaller than the state of New Jersey, with only 8 million people, but again and again becomes the center of world focus. So you must ask yourself, why is this? And the answer is partially spiritual in nature. There are so many other serious situations happening around the globe, yet time and time again, the world is overly focused on what Israel is doing. 1 million people dead in Ukraine, Christians being murdered in the Congo and other places in Africa by the thousands. Yet all of this focus always seems to go to Israel no matter what is happening. So I saw this quote on X this week, and it gets right to the heart of the matter. It said this: if you can see the situation with Israel clearly, then you will be able to rightfully see everything else that's going on in the world. But if you fail to see what is really happening in Israel, then you will not be able to understand what is happening around the globe. And so your thoughts about this issue are very important, because it's going to help you understand everything else that's happening. And I also believe that the biblical narrative has Israel at the center in Genesis, and in Revelation has New Jerusalem coming down from heaven. And so from the beginning to the Bible to the end, you see this messianic Jewish theme. The Bible from start to finish is focused around this nation of Israel. So now you're going to understand the evil we are up against, and why the enemy is working overtime to taint the view of the Jewish people and the nation of Israel, and why we are seeing this rise of anti-Semitism go worldwide. I know in New York City, here where I live, they were beating up Jewish people on the streets in Brooklyn and Manhattan. And the truth is what do Jews that are here living in New York City have to do with the Israeli government? And the truth is nothing. Some of them don't even support the Israeli government. Okay, so there's something more going on. Now, so you could understand the evil we are up against, let's take a quick look who is on the other side of this battle in Palestine, which is Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. But what most don't know is they want to completely eliminate the Jews, but they are coming for other groups as well. So there is a popular quote going around in some places on social media: if Hamas laid down their weapons, there would be peace. But they'll say if the Jews laid down their weapons, there would be genocide. And that concept is very, there's a lot of truth to that as well. And few want to really recognize who's the real problem here. So we're going to take a look at some fighters from Hamas speaking and how it's going to apply to you.
والله لو أخرجنا اليهود من فلسطين، لو أخرجناهم من فلسطين وأخرجناهم من بيت المقدس دون أن يسلموا ولو ذهبوا آخر العالم، سنلاحقهم وسندعوهم إلى الإسلام وندعو للإسلام وندعو جميع النصارى للإسلام. نعم نعم، ديننا دين الرحمة.
نعم، أنا أوصي أولا الإخوة المجاهدين في سرايا القدس أن يستمروا في عملهم المقاوم.
نحن لا نحب الحياة، نحن طلقنا الدنيا بالثلاثة، نحن الذين عمروا آخرتهم.
What shocked me about the video was the tone and the complete anger and hatred in his voice, unlike anything you ever seen. And so, in essence, if you saw that video, it said Hamas was saying our issue is not just with Palestine. Our issue is with killing every non-Muslim. We will pursue Jews and Christians all over the world. Either way, they convert to Islam or we will kill them. Okay, and this doesn't go for all Muslims. There are many good, peaceful Muslims, but in certain factions of radical Islam like Hamas, they are not just coming from the Jews, but like we saw in this video, they're coming for the Christians as well. And they want to see forced conversions, okay? Either you convert or you die. So when any Westerners support this madness, they're calling for their own elimination. It's totally crazy. A lot of liberal people are following this and supporting Palestine with not realizing that if they were in the Middle East, these Hamas would kill them and they would rape the women and they would oppress women. And they don't treat women well in radical Islam. So this is totally crazy. They are coming for Christians after they're coming from the Jews. Most Westerners don't understand that they would be killed in a heartbeat by these people. And not to mention, what about the LGBTQ folks that would be for certainly killed with no rights over there? So Israel is not just fighting the Palestinians and the Palestinian people, which, let me tell you something, my heart breaks for them. To see 70% of the structures destroyed over there, to see these people having a hard time getting food, any Christian should be concerned. And there are a lot of Christians that are Palestinians as well. And so I am really concerned for the Palestinians. I do pray for them. My heart is broken. But I realize what's happening here is that Israel is fighting Hamas. They're not fighting the Palestinian people. But in order to do that, these people are being displaced right now, and their buildings are being destroyed because it's the only way to get to Hamas. But Hamas won't come out and fight fair because this would be over in a few days. Israel would totally slaughter them. They want to use guerrilla warfare tactics, so Israel is forced to go into these residential areas to go after Hamas. So we knew from the beginning that this was going to be an ugly situation. They embedded themselves within their people, using their own people as human shields. So Israel had to destroy so many of the buildings in Gaza, up to 70%, and this caused people to be displaced. And it's just a terrible aesthetics to watch. I am praying for the Palestinian people. My heart breaks for them. So some of the people are now without shelter. Many of them are having a hard time getting food. But Israel has these warehouses in the desert of food for them. And I played it in my last video. It's pallets and pallets and pallets that go on for like a mile, okay, with hundreds of trucks that are ready to distribute those food. But what happens is, and the Israel government got onto this, is as soon as the food gets released, it ends up in the hands of Hamas. And their people end up starving. And Hamas doesn't even care. They'll let their own people starve. So Israel had to pull back a little bit to be more strategic. And as soon as they did that, then they said, Israel is starving the people. Look at what they've done to one Israeli hostage. Look at what Hamas is doing. And this has gotten basically no media coverage from the mainstream media. So you'll see here, this is one of the hostages. He is just good-looking young man. And when you see him in the next photos, he's just basically a skeleton living in a tunnel. And he's like a shell of his former self. Look at him. They're starving him. And they not only did this to him, but they did that to these other hostages, starving hostages, okay, which is a war crime, all right? Now, here is a video of that same prisoner. Kind of, a lot of people were suggesting he could be digging his own grave.
מה שאני עושה עכשיו, אני חופר את הקבר. הקבר שמיד מבחינתי לי, כי כל יום שעובר הגוף שלי הולך, נחלש, נראה רזה יותר וחלש יותר. מבחינתי זה נראה שאני בדרך למוות שלי. חופר לעצמי את הקבר שבו אני אולי אשכב. ובאמת, כל יום שהולך ועובר, הזמן נגמר. הזמן הולך ואוזל. ורק אתם תוכלו לעצור את זה, כדי שנוכל לשכב במיטה שלי.
Okay, so you're seeing there's the terrible video. They're starving the hostages. A guy doesn't even look like a human being at this point. So they are trying to turn the media attention to the fact that Israel is starving them when actually they're doing the same exact thing that they're saying that Israel has done. And then they're also beating them and in some case sexually molesting the women hostages. Okay? So Hamas seems to be winning the PR battle in this whole entire situation. How do we know that? Because more and more people are turning on Israel as this plays out, as it goes on longer and longer. Hamas is using everything as a PR campaign. And they're winning because a lot of ways they're getting the Western world to turn on Israel. And Hamas knows exactly what they're doing. Okay, so I'm going to play another clip of a situation that took 15 minutes from my house, which is in Brooklyn, and this is some Muslims that ended up taking over a highway in my area. Okay, so just a disturbing video. Kind of they took over the whole highway, completely stopped the highway, completely blocking traffic, which is illegal, and then basically out there shouting, you know, God knows what they're saying and all this. But imagine being a guest in a country and acting like they rule the place. I want to be very, very clear here. I love all people, nations, and religions, okay? But please do not come to America and then sit down in the living room and pretend like you own it and all that stuff. This is where we should draw the line. You have a right to express yourself, but they're breaking the law. They're blocking highways, acting like they own the place. No, 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 no. And we must begin to say no to this stuff right now. And again, I respect all people that want freedom of religion, freedom of nationality, but they crossed the line in this video, and we're seeing more and more stuff like this happen in other nations all around the world, and this must be rejected outright, saying, I still love you. I want you to have the right to practice your religion in any way you fit, but when you start blocking highways and doing stuff like this, no, 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 not in our country. Now, so we're going to get into Bill Clinton's comments on the situation in Palestine. What is shocking is that this Democrat in this situation is going to be the voice of reason here. Although I have huge issues with the Clinton family for obvious reasons, recently they have been subpoenaed in the Epstein case this week. But at the same time, I do believe that they were the last generation of sane Democrats. The Democratic Party has shifted too radical left, And it happened so quickly, almost overnight. And the truth is that in this last election, people woke up, realized that they shifted too radical left. And now the narrative has gone that the Democratic Party doesn't have a future. Through seeing people like Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, they were saying during these last two elections, why is the Democratic Party focusing so much on the LGTB issue? Right? This is a small percentage of the population. Why the Clintons were saying outright, this is not a good idea. This is not good what Joe Biden is doing, because this is going to cause some backlash. And so they were pushing back on a lot of different things the Biden administration was doing. And because they're sane Democrats, they realize that some of this stuff is counterintuitive to the movement. And what is being lost in this last election, they completely abandoned common sense. All right. So Bill Clinton is going to drop some truth bombs that you need to hear. The quality of this video is kind of poor, but it is worth it in what he says. But he's going to bring some sane, rational thought to this issue. And it's coming from a U.S. president that worked a lot with the Palestinians to try to get a deal that worked in their favor. Okay. So let's hear what he has to say.
Understand why young Palestinian and Arab Americans in Michigan think too many people have died. I get that. But if you lived in one of those kibbutzim in Israel, right next to Gaza, where the people there were the most pro-friendship with Palestine, most pro-two-state solution of any of the Israeli communities, were the ones right next to Gaza. And Hamas butchered them. And so then the people who criticize it are essentially saying, yeah, but look how many people you've killed in retaliation. So how many is enough for you to kill to punish them for the terrible things they did? That all sounds nice until you realize, what would you do if it was your family and you hadn't done anything but support a homeland for the Palestinians, and one day they come for you and slaughter the people here? And the only time Yasser Arafat didn't tell me the truth was when he promised me he was going to accept the peace deal that we had worked out, which would have given the Palestinians a state, and they said no. And I think part of it is that Hamas did not care about a homeland for the Palestinians. They wanted to kill Israelis and make Israel uninhabitable. Well, I got news for them. They were there first. Before their faith existed, they were there. In the time of King David, and the southernmost tribes had Judea and Samaria.
Okay, so we're going to listen to another clip by Bill Clinton in a minute. But so you heard what he said. The Jews who were the most supportive to the Palestinians were those people that they butchered that day in the desert. Okay, and it was just a mass atrocity. I remember seeing the videos for that. Very disturbing. Those were liberal, non-religious Jews, and they were in big support for a Palestinian state. And what do you think those liberal Jews are thinking now? Okay, because they ended up getting mass deleted on October 7th, therefore rallying the whole Jewish population against Palestine. And many hate the president of Israel right now. A lot of people do not like him in Israel, but they ended up supporting with him in the war efforts. Then Clinton drops another major bombshell. And anybody who knows history knows this. Israel was in the land first. And not only were they in the land first, but they had a well-established government which controlled all the various areas around it. This established government was able to take care of people, and people are still talking about King David's kingdom to this day, how he's considered to be one of the best leaders in world history. And it is important to note that Palestine has never had a functioning government that was able to take care of the people. So it's important to realize that the Jewish people were in that region first, and not only that, but they had a well-established government. Now we're going to get into another Bill Clinton clip, and he dropped some more bombs that he presented a plan that would have given the Palestinians their own state. And it was a very generous offer, but they rejected the offer. So this whole situation on October 7th could have been avoided and stuff. So Bill Clinton is going to let you know how he offered them a statehood. Let's get into it.
I think what's happened there in the last 25 years is one of the great tragedies of the 21st century. And when I tell the young people, for example, who are understandably in America, or let's say they're super sympathetic with the Palestinians, well, they've been killed, a lot of those Palestinians have, and all they know is that a lot more Palestinians have been killed than Israelis. And I tell them what Arafat walked away from, and they can't believe it. I said, oh yeah, he walked away from a Palestinian state with a capital in East Jerusalem, 96% of the West Bank, 4% of Israel to make up for the 4% that the settlers occupy that were beyond the borders in the 67 war. And I go through all the stuff that was in the deal, and they it's not on their radar screen. They can't even imagine that happened. And I tell them, the first and most famous victim of an attempt to give the Palestinians a state was Prime Minister Rabin, whom I think loved as much as I ever loved another man. And so Rabin, he dies, and then Shimon Peres is defeated in the election, and where the rest of it is history. But you walk away from these once-in-a-lifetime peace opportunities, and you can't complain 25 years later when the doors weren't all still open and all the possibilities weren't still there. You can't do it. It's just...
Your voice just cracked when you said that.
Yeah. I'm an old guy. I have my regrets. That's one of them.
Okay, so you saw it yourself. The Palestinians had the deal of a lifetime. Give rap for them by Bill Clinton. And Yasser Arafat rejected the sweetheart deal that would have given them their own land. Okay, so basically he said that in another interview that I heard with him, he said Yasser Arafat said no to every single thing that he proposed in the few days that he was here in America during that time. No, 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 no to everything they proposed, not only just for this peace deal. So a lot of people don't even know that Palestine has been offered a state 5 separate times. And some people suggest even possibly more, depending on what they consider a peace deal. And they have rejected the deals all 5 times. So we're going to get into a short video about that.
The Palestinians to have a state of their own, there would be peace in the Middle East, right? That's what you hear from UN ambassadors, European diplomats, and most college professors. But what if I told you that Israel has already offered the Palestinians a state of their own? And not just once, but on 5 separate occasions. Don't believe me? Let's review the record. After the breakup of the Ottoman Empire following World War I, Britain took control of most of the Middle East, including the area that constitutes modern Israel. 17 years later, in 1936, the Arabs rebelled against the British and against their Jewish neighbors. The British formed a task force, the Peel Commission, to study the cause of the rebellion. The commission concluded that the reason for the violence was that 2 peoples, Jews and Arabs, wanted to govern the same land. The answer, the Peel Commission concluded, would be to create 2 independent states, one for the Jews and one for the Arabs, a 2-state solution. The suggested split was heavily in favor of the Arabs. The British offered them 80% of the disputed territory, the Jews the remaining 20%. Yet, despite the tiny size of their proposed state, the Jews voted to accept this offer. But the Arabs rejected it and resumed their violent rebellion.
So if you just saw that right there, basically they gave the Arabs over 80% of the land in that deal. Basically, who wouldn't have taken that deal? Actually, Israel was just offered a small portion of the land. And they accepted it because they just wanted to be in the land. And they turned it down. Whew. Wow, let's continue.
Rejection number 1. 10 years later, in 1947, the British asked the United Nations to find a new solution to the continuing tensions. Like the Peel Commission, the UN decided that the best way to resolve the conflict was to divide the land. In November 1947, the UN voted to create two states. Again, the Jews accepted the offer, and again, the Arabs rejected it. Only this time, they did so by launching an all-out war. Rejection number 2. Jordan, Egypt, Iraq, Lebanon, and Syria joined the conflict, but they failed. Israel won the war and got on with the business of building a new nation. Most of the land set aside by the UN for an Arab state, the West Bank and East Jerusalem, became occupied territory, occupied not by Israel, but by Jordan. 20 years later, in 1967, the Arabs, led this time by Egypt and joined by Syria and Jordan, once again sought to destroy the Jewish state. The 1967 conflict, known as the Six-Day War, ended in a stunning victory for Israel. Jerusalem and the West Bank, as well as the area known as the Gaza Strip, fell into Israel's hands. The government split over what to do with this new territory. Half wanted to return the West Bank to Jordan and Gaza to Egypt in exchange for peace. The other half wanted to give it to the region's Arabs, who had begun referring to themselves as the Palestinians, in the hope that they would ultimately build their own state there. Neither initiative got very far. A few months later, the Arab League met in Sudan and issued its infamous 3 no's. No peace with Israel, no recognition of Israel, no negotiations with Israel.
Okay, again, no, 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 no. And you're going to see that as a constant, theme here in all of the situations. They've rejected almost everything.
Again, a two-state solution was dismissed by the Arabs, making this rejection number 3. In 2000, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak met at Camp David with Palestinian Liberation Organization Chairman Yasser Arafat to conclude a new two-state plan. Barak offered Arafat a Palestinian state in all of Gaza and 94% of the West Bank, with East Jerusalem as its capital. But the Palestinian leader rejected the offer. In the words of U.S. President Bill Clinton, Arafat was here 14 days and said no to everything. Instead, the Palestinians launched a bloody wave of suicide bombings that killed over 1,000 Israelis and maimed thousands more on buses, in wedding halls, and in pizza parlors. Rejection number 4. In 2008, Israel tried yet again. Prime Minister Ehud Olmert went even further than Ehud Barak had, expanding the peace offer to include additional land to sweeten the deal. Like his predecessor, the new Palestinian leader, Mahmoud Abbas, turned the deal down. Rejection number 5. In between these last 2 Israeli offers, Israel unilaterally left Gaza, giving the Palestinians complete control there. Instead of developing this territory for the good of its citizens, the Palestinians turned Gaza into a terrorist base from which they have fired thousands of rockets into Israel. Each time Israel has agreed to a Palestinian state, the Palestinians have rejected the offer, often violently. So if you're interested in peace in the Middle East, maybe the answer is not to pressure Israel to make yet another offer of a state to the Palestinians. Maybe the answer is to pressure the Palestinians to finally accept the existence of a Jewish state.
Okay, so you see it there. Palestine offered statehood 5 separate times, and they rejected it on every single question. Now, we're seeing a lot of calls again for a 2-state solution in the media. That's what everybody is saying. And shockingly, this has come from Western nations. France decided that they will recognize Palestine as a state. And last week, we saw the United Kingdom and Canada are considering it. So you say to yourself, why is this happening now for the first time in this situation? Let's get into this. So if you look here in this article in the Christian Post, it says, Christian majority countries declining worldwide. UK, Australia, France, and Uruguay no longer majority Christian. So the article explains that the most significant changes occurred in the United Kingdom, Australia, France, and Uruguay, all of which have lost their Christian majorities during the last 10-year span. In these nations, they share of people identifying as Christians fell below 50%, while the percentage of religious unaffiliated individuals rose substantially. Now, this has nothing to do with France, United Kingdom, and Canada being the good guys on the right side of the situation. But it has everything to do with these nations, especially France and UK. They are cowering to their Muslim population, which is taking over those countries. And if you have seen the Palestine rallies in London and in France in recent times, you should be shocked and alarmed on every single level. So now you know why they're doing this. So this is not about the United Kingdom and France doing the right thing, but they are only doing this to appease their Muslim populations, period. So they want to recognize a Palestinian state or possibly recognize it. Now, we are going to look at one last video by Peter Zeihan. I watch 2 or 3 of his videos every week. He is one of the top geopolitical experts in the world, and he tends to lean on the liberal side of matters. He is going to explain why Palestinian does not meet any of the criteria for statehood. And he names a few key things they would need to have, and they do not possess any of the criteria that's needed for statehood. And Zeihan is more of a liberal, more sympathetic towards the Palestinian and Gaza situation.
Hey all, Peter Zeihan here, coming to you from Oregon. Today we're going to talk about the French recent recognition of the Palestinians as an independent country. The question is whether this moves anything in Gaza or in the region at all. And the answer is really no.
So when you're thinking about retirement, one of the first things you want is to calculate how much you
Today we're going to talk about the French recent recognition of the Palestinians as an independent country. The question is whether this moves anything in Gaza or in the region at all. And the answer is really no. To be a country, there's a few things you have to have. You have to have a permanent contiguous population. You have to have clearly defined borders. You have to have a government that can project power throughout that zone. And ideally, an economy that can support the population. And really, Palestine does not qualify.
Okay, so you're seeing there, again, Palestine does not have any of the qualities they would need to have statehood. So they would need a permanent, continuous population, clearly defined borders, a government that can project power in that space, and an economy that can support the population. Because right now, the Strip of Gaza is considered one of the most donated to places on the face of the planet. They're getting billions of dollars of aid. And this economy that they have cannot support the population. Okay, so they are not capable of governing themselves. And I know this is very hard to hear for many people. When I heard Zeihan basically explain all of this, I was totally shocked because I didn't even realize how bad it was. So you're hearing a geopolitical expert explain this. It comes off differently. But he's saying they have none of the possibilities. They have none of the qualities that they would need to have in order for statehood.
The single biggest problem, of course, is this is not one chunk of territory. It's two, if you're being charitable, that being the Gaza Strip, and then you have the West Bank. But even within that, that's not true. Even if you ignore the fact that there's a war going on and Israel has basically balkanized the Gaza Strip into a bunch of pieces. That happened a long time ago in the West Bank, and it's not one piece, it's dozens. So the Palestinians, by any definition, can't control their own territory and have been broken up into a few dozen different bits that in many cases are not on the same side. That's a problem too. There's no single government here. Fatah, which is the group that cut the peace deal with the Israelis all those years ago, controls the West Bank enclaves, and Hamas, which is at war with Israel, controls the Gaza Strip. So this isn't one government, this is several governments, or if you're being charitable, two.
Okay, so he's saying the situation is complex because it's not just one state. You have Gaza and the West Bank, okay? And there are also shared spaces that the Arabs and Jews share together, like Nazareth, the hometown of Jesus, okay? So let's get in. Let's continue to listen to Zeihan.
It doesn't qualify. Third, the borders. I mean, yeah, technically on a map they're there, but again, Israel controls all of the territory between all of the enclaves, and that's before you consider the war in Gaza. And then finally, there's the economics of it. This is a chunk of land that imports well over 95% of its energy and well over 95% of its food. And so there's no way it could function as an independent state unless somebody pays for it to exist. And if you're one of those horrible people who says that the solution is just to kill all the Jews and allow all of this territory to be Palestinian, I'm sorry, that doesn't help, and you're also a monster, because Israel imports.
Okay, so I'm glad that he says that, that basically, because there are some people suggesting just kick Israel out of the land, and you're almost like, what? Are you kidding me? How could you talk like that? And where do you think the phrase comes from, the river to the sea, that they've been chanting at these rallies? It is a phrase being chanted all over the world during this war. It means that the Jews will be completely driven out of the land. And many suggest that it has the undertones of pushing the Jews into the water, the Mediterranean, letting them all drown. It's just terrible. Let's just listen to one more clip from this video.
It's over 90% of its energy, and based on whose numbers you're using, somewhere between 50% and 80% of its food before you consider the Palestinian territories. So there's no version of this where it works unless it is done hand in glove with the Israeli government. So if you're looking for a solution to the Palestinian problem, and it is a problem, it starts with talks with the Israeli government, which of course means that the Israeli government is the one who has functional veto power. And yes, that can get ugly and messy, but unfortunately, it is the only way forward. Having somebody on the outside saying that the Palestinians are a thing achieves nothing.
Okay, so you heard Zeihan say basically all of these countries calling for them to be recognized from the outside. It doesn't mean anything because they can't even support themselves. This government can't even be sustained. Okay, so I don't think people realize that even if you take before this situation in Israel, what bad condition Gaza is in, and the way that these people lived is beyond, it's poverty level. A large majority of the population. So before the war came, that situation over there is a disaster. The leadership of Hamas is billionaires. They have some of the richest people in the world. They're stealing all the aid that's coming from various countries, and this was before the war, making sure that it don't get to the people, and it's padding their pockets. So he has taken a hard shot at all of these countries like France and the UK calling for a Palestinian statehood. He said it's absolutely really ridiculous. The Palestinians cannot function on their own apart from Israel, not to mention they have never had a functional government capable of taking care of the people in the history of this region. So if Israel just pulled out today, these people would still be left with Hamas. And I think we realize at this point, the Palestinian people need a new government. And in order to do that, Hamas has to go because they do not take care of these people. They are not in the best interest of these people. But it's hard to watch because you look at the aesthetics of all the buildings destroyed, the people being displaced, the people looking for food. It's a terrible situation, okay? And my heart is totally broken for what the people in Gaza are going through right now. I can't explain. I've spent many nights being up, worried about these people, praying for them. So Israel has got to be strategic about releasing this aid to the Palestinians, okay? Because a lot of people are saying they're starving them. Meanwhile, Hamas is starving their captives, all right? And this caused all of these people to go hungry in the region because we saw, as I showed you in my videos, all the warehouses with pallets and pallets of food that went on for like a mile. But Israel is being strategic in releasing that food. There is enough food to feed the whole entire country right in the desert. But Israel wants to release that food strategically. Then Hamas steals the food. And then the cries grow internationally for Israel to stop starving the people. And even Trump said recently they're starving because if you watch the videos, you definitely looked at these people when they're handing out the food, they're ripping it apart. It's almost like you've never seen anything like this in your life. So Israel releases the food to the people, and then we're going to look to see what happens right after that. Now, remember, the New York Times stated that running headlines saying there is no proof that Hamas is stealing any food in Gaza. So they're sticking up for Hamas and the Palestinians and saying nothing is being stolen there. So Israel really realizes that they need to release a lot more food, because they're being called out by Trump, and the whole world is saying, God, you got to get the food to this people, and we're going to see what happens when they release the food. Okay, so you're going to see here video from that day when they released the food. Let's get into this. Okay, so who has that truck right there? Armed rebels. That's Hamas on the trucks. Okay, so Israel releases the food, and not only does Hamas steal the food, but they steal all of the trucks that are delivering the food with armed rebels taking over. And you just saw it yourself. The media is not covering this, and the truth is what the problem is here. And if you don't have spiritual discernment, if you're not looking closer at this, Hamas is the evil. Hamas is the real evil. It's not Israel. I'm not saying that Israel is perfect. They certainly haven't done everything perfect. This situation is alarming for many people, but this is a war that Hamas started. And the truth is that these are terrorists, and they cannot stay in power. They are not only terrorists, but the leaders of Hamas are billionaires while their own people starve. And that's even before this war started. They are not capable of taking care of these people either. Okay, so this is a very serious situation. Hamas is the greater evil here in this situation. And if you can't see that, I don't really know what to tell you, okay? But I just wanted to present you with some proof because, again, the liberal media is not reporting what's really happening on the ground. Now, I was shocked to see that CNN had reported this. I didn't think they would report this. But many Arab states called on Hamas to disarm and relinquish power in an unprecedented move. So now Arab states are starting to call and tell Hamas step down. They're not speaking to Israel. They're speaking to their own people. So their own Arab people are telling Hamas to stand down. You're the one standing in the way of power. So Arab and Muslims, States, including Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, for the first time have issued a joint call for Hamas to disarm and relinquish power in the Gaza Strip as part of efforts to end the war for the territory. So 22 members of this Arab League, an entire European Union, and another 17 countries backed a declaration signed at the United Nations conference hosted by Saudi Arabia and France on Tuesday. Speaking at the UN Tuesday, the French foreign minister said that on the part of Saudi Arabia and the Arab and Muslim countries who for the first time will condemn terrorism, the acts of terror on October the 7th, and a call for disarmament of Hamas, and express their hope to have a normalized relationship with Israel in due time. Okay, so this is huge because these Arab nations are beginning to wake up and seeing this is not good for the region, this is not good for business, and they're calling Hamas out. They're saying that's a terrorist attack, which they've never done up to this point, and they condemned Hamas and called them to disarm. So to be very clear, this war, for this war to end, Hamas has to either step down or be eliminated. And now you're seeing that these Arab countries are calling for Hamas to step down because they're the problem. But if they do not, Israel should continue to fight this war until they are removed from power. You cannot rationalize or reason with terrorists. There is no discussion that you could have with them to get them to stop what they're doing. And believe me, I am heartbroken for the Palestinian people. My heart is broken for the sights of things that are happening in Gaza. They're being displaced. These people have no food. There's 60,000 people dead. Although out of that 60,000 people that are dead, it's a 2.7% of the population. But 1.5% of the population is Hamas. So the civilian casualties are very low for a war, something also that the media is not announcing. And 70% of the building structures are destroyed. People are displaced, looking for food. I mean, on a human level, we should all be concerned with the Palestinian people and the people of Gaza. We should all be praying for them. And that is, we're praying for the ones who aren't working with Hamas, okay? So a lot of civilians have been killed over there, and they have found later to be working with Hamas. So there's about 1 to 2% of the population that is working with Hamas over there and helping their military efforts. So I just want to end this video today by saying I believe Hamas is the real issue here. Okay, that although this war has been absolutely terrible, unfortunately, it is necessary. Evil has to be faced and it has to be removed. They aren't going to step down. They aren't going to bow out because they have a slogan from the river to the sea, which means there is no place here for the Jewish people and there is no place for them in this country. From the river to the sea, it'll be ours. And it's radical Islam. Like I said, let me state that very clearly. There are many wonderful, peaceful Muslim people that are just wonderful people, that are just faithful to their country. They work hard. They believe in praying, etc. That we're not talking about them. In this video, we're talking about radical Islam, terrorism, Hamas, terrorist organizations like Hezbollah and Hamas. And I think at the end of the day, as tough as this is, I think that the Palestinian people might have a better future with Hamas removed, and then they can come into the Gaza Strip and rebuild that area and give them a brand new beginning, okay? So I think ultimately that's where it's leading. I think I've heard recently that Israel is about to take complete control of the Gaza Strip to finish out Hamas because they released the photos of that hostage that I showed you at the beginning of the video, skin and bones, and they decided that they're going to take over the region of Gaza to finish the war against Hamas. And then at that point, sometime later, the U.S. and Israel is going to work out a plan to rebuild Gaza and get them a new beginning, a new start without Hamas. Okay, so I need to make it clear too that I don't always support the actions of the Israeli government. Okay, so there have been a lot of things that they have done in the course of this whole situation that I don't necessarily agree with. They're hard to accept. However, I do always stand 100% with the nation of Israel and the Jewish people for their right to exist in the land and the right to defend themselves when attacked. I stand with them. But I also believe God is not done with the Jewish people yet. I believe the whole biblical narrative centers around this little nation. I think that they are still God's chosen people, although right now they're in rebellion, and in many ways they've been judged by God. But I feel that he will find a way to get through to him because God is a promise keeper. He made an everlasting covenant with the Jewish people and intended and also made a covenant for the land to the Jewish people. Okay, so basically God is not done with the Jewish people yet. It says in Romans 11 that all Israel will be saved, which is talking about a remnant that will be saved during the last stages of the earth, that they will turn to accept Jesus as the Messiah. They will wake up from their slumber. Remember, this is the age of the Gentiles, and the Bible says that the Jews have been hardened. There's been a veil over their face. And they're rejecting Jesus as the Messiah at this point. But the Bible says because God is faithful to his bride, to his people Israel, he is going to save them in the last stages of human existence. So that is why there is a spiritual battle for this land. It shows that they are chosen and that it causes people to really hate the Jews because they are called the chosen people, because they've done great things, because they've been excellent in a lot of different ways. The nations have been jealous of them, and that's part of the reason why I'm making a video here. Really, the Jews are a really small percentage of the world population, yet they're always finding themselves in the midst of just terrible situations like this. There's been no peace in the land of Israel since they inhabited it since 1948. And it's just been terrible, the things that the Jewish people have had to go through, like the Holocaust and other things, and the anti-Semitism in the history of Europe and Christianity. Christians haven't been good to the Jews, and in some ways I'm sticking up for the small guy here, the little guy here. Okay, so please comment down below with your questions, concerns, whatever. Even if you don't agree with me, just be respectful. I love hearing what you guys have to say. I really love hearing your comments and stuff. I read through most of them, and I do my best to respond when I can. Although the channel's growing at this point, I can't respond to every comment or even most of the comments at this point. That if you have prayer requests, put that in the comment section. I am praying over the comment section every day in my prayer time. I scroll through it and lifting up the requests that are put there. Lastly, if you would like to support the channel so I can continue to bring you videos like this in the future, you can hit the give button right on YouTube or check the video description, find out how to give a one-time donation via PayPal or Zelle. And if you really love the content, please consider becoming a monthly partner by hitting join on YouTube, or you go over to Patreon. Monthly partners will get extra perks. I can interact with you a bit closer. We do not make a lot of money on YouTube, as many suggest. Some months I lose money. The only way that I can continue to do this is because of my monthly partners. Thank you so much. Okay, so I do have a full-time job during the day, and then I'm doing this on nights and weekends. It's not easy, so all the support, I really appreciate you guys. You have no idea. Okay, so I do need more monthly partners so that I'm hoping to transition on over to do this full-time so that I can make more videos, better quality videos. So thank you for watching today. I close every video that said Christianity is 3 things. It's to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. It's to love other people with the love that God has given you. And the third thing is to go out into all the world. It's the Great Commission to preach the gospel, to tell everybody about the good news of Jesus Christ. Thank you for watching today. Be blessed.